I got this crazy pain in my head. It felt like somebody was stabbing me. I was 27. I didn't really think anything of it. And then the next thing I remember, I think I fell to the floor and I lost mobility on my right side because I had a full hemorrhagic stroke and 2 areas of bleeding in my brain. I was paralyzed on my right side for a period of time. I remember being on the floor, losing mobility, trying to pick up my phone and saying, like, call my emergency contact.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. We're bringing the best and the brightest from all the business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today on the podcast is Amanda Dorenberg. Amanda is a technology and marketing executive with a passion for disrupting traditional industries via new and emerging tech. Currently, the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. We'll call it just COME for short. I think it's a lot easier. It's a mouthful. And she's responsible for driving innovative change using new and emerging tech across the out-of-home industry, which we'll get into. Out-of-home is a interesting term, and we're going to have Amanda break that down for folks who don't know what it is. And I'll hit the continue music button here because it only lasts a minute or two. But she has a ton of wealth in knowledge, experience, and she has an incredible story. So let's get to it. Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
All right, I'm going to lower my music now and get into it. Well, awesome, thank you. And we have our friends up north in the in Toronto. My home away from home. 20 plus years ago, I was telling Amanda before we went on the air. I went to school up in Buffalo and had many good times up there. But we'll save that for another podcast when we go.
It's a different topic.
Yeah, we're not talking about college, Adam. That is just no one needs to hear about that. So the show is about you, Amanda. So before we get into the current Amanda, there was a version of Amanda growing up, and correct me if I'm wrong, keep me straight on this, that kind of went down the road of a professional model. Where happened? We scouted them all. Was it one of those like cliche modeling stories? Tell us about that.
It's a little bit cliche.
Yeah, let's get into it. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a little cliche. I was scouted in a mall, so nailed that one. I grew up in a small town, like very, very small town called Prince Edward County, which apparently now is wine country. But I haven't been back in about like 25 plus years.
Well, the grapes have grown in 25 years, Amanda. They would just start on the vine.
I think they did. But, back then it was nothing but farm fields of wheat and hay and blueberries and not a lot of grapes at the time. So I had what I like to say a less than favorable upbringing per se. So my familial upbringing had, addicted parents and, abusive home situations. So I did everything I could to possibly get out as quickly as possible. And I was 14 at the time. I was in Toronto at a mall, and a model scout came up to me, and I thought it was kind of a bit of a joke, to be honest.
A little creepy, maybe.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? Like, I'm a child. But when I did my research, it was one of the largest international modeling agencies. It was Elite Models. So they scouted me. And then around 16, I moved out of my parents' house when I was 16, 2 days after my 16th birthday, in fact. But at that age, I had worked through their sort of model development program for the prior 2 years. And they had put me into the women's division and started sort of sending me out on gigs. And I got signed with a number of international modeling agencies. And I spent from 16 until I was almost 32 as a professional model. It was a whirlwind experience. I had agencies as well at the time. So I opened a model placement agency and an artist representation agency during my 20s.
When did that, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here and we'll spend a couple minutes, but I want to talk first about when did that light bulb go off where you started to see like the business side of it as an opportunity for you to not just model, but, make some other money off of it by opening an agency?
So I think I was probably it would have been in my early 20s. So I graduated high school when I was 16. I was very much a nerd. So graduated high school when I was 16, moved out, put myself through college. I did computer programming and systems analysis while I was modeling full time. And I actually worked at a call center full time as well, doing tech support. And I went to university. I did a bachelor's degree in marketing, media, and communications when I was 18 to 21-ish. And it was during that time that I really fell into the business side of things. And it definitely transformed my modeling because I would be more inquisitive. I'd be like, why did you book me? I don't look like the rest of the girls here. I'm like the oddball out. Why are you looking
understanding the business side of it and the
exactly.
logic.
It was trying to, I made friends with all of the production crew because I wanted to understand, what they were doing and why they were doing this. And so I think it would have been, during my university years, let's say 18 to 21, that made me think about, hey, I could turn this into an actual business. So I started initially doing model placement because that was the most familiar to me. I was a model, so I could see what these brands technically wanted.
What they were looking for.
Yeah. So I started with that, and then I kind of expanded and went and opened a second company in artist representation, which was like photographers, videographers,
the whole industry,
DOPs, yeah.
And what was one of those, first really hard lessons learned the hard way, as they like to say?
Which capacity? Which one? The agency side or the modeling?
Yeah, well, let's do agency side first, then we're going to unpack the modeling side too.
The agency side, learning a very difficult lesson that people really wanted my contacts. I was a bit naive and, young, one of my first businesses. So it was a hard lesson to learn because it was somebody whom I thought was a very dear friend. And unfortunately, turned out not to be. I just wanted to steal my contacts at all of the, the Condé Nast, the Vogue, et cetera, of the world. So yeah, that was a hard lesson learned.
And how much has that affected your ability to trust people professionally and personally?
I actually think it's helped me a lot. It's helped me to be able to understand what motivates individuals in a very quick fashion. So typically when I meet someone, and my friends and my business partners will say this, they're like, oh, she's like a human calculator. She'll just read you. She'll know
you could size people up pretty quickly and understand their intentions and motivations, right?
Exactly. So I think that, it gives you a level of street smarts where you understand, what's motivating individuals and how that will transpire in business.
So talk about street smarts. How did that translate into, what people say about the dark side of modeling? You were a young girl, lots of young girls in the industry. I'm sure you had to deal with your fair share of, harassment, sexual harassment, and navigating through that. Tell us a little bit about that time. How, as a 16-year-old, out in the world by yourself, I mean, that's, hard to wrap my head around, but like, what was that time like? I mean, I'm not putting a date on it, but, it's still in a recent past. Yes, but certainly before the Me Too movement.
A bit of a lifetime ago. I'm open about my age. I'm 40 now, so I'm very proud to be a young.
Welcome to the 40 club. It's not that bad. 40 is.
I turned 40 in April, so I'm here. There was a lot. There was back then. I was very thin, and I was maybe like 115 pounds soaking wet, and I'm 5'9". So I was your typical like slender model in the 90s and the early 2000s. And I had hips, let's say, which now everybody wants hips. But
hips are now back in style. Who would have figured?
Hips are back in style. But back then they were not in style. And my agencies would often request that I diet or I do this and that and lose weight. And then, on the flip side, the sexual harassment component, I have stories that could probably, I won't repeat them, but I have stories that would make women cringe. Men throwing credit cards down and trying to force you into sexual acts. And it was truly appalling, but certainly gave me thick skin, if you will, and gave me the capacity to understand that you don't, first and foremost, you never have to, concede to that or go down that path. But it's okay to be strong enough to say, no, and that is not going to get you to where you want to be. In fact, it should be inspiring to be able to do that without having to go down that path.
Yeah, I mean, from what I hear, I mean, we certainly made strides as far as that in the industry, but it's still prevalent. There's still,
Still very
elements of that. And today with this modern culture of, let's make a little left turn here, right? Like, how does it, like, I think now of like, I think it's a platform like OnlyFans, right? And I think of it two sides, one from an exploitation perspective. And then I also think from a monetization perspective that it's really enabling so many women and men and everything in between and everybody to really have a platform to make money. And who gives a shit, right? The whole kind of image is changing. The whole perception is changing. What are your thoughts on
I think it's, for individuals who are leveraging OnlyFans, it's empowering. At the end of the day, it's their body. They can share it. They can do whatever they want with it. You know what I mean? And no one gets to dictate how they're portrayed or, what the perception is of them. I think it's great. Kudos to them. I don't have the capacity to do it, but kudos to them.
I mean, I if I had like, I joke around with my friends, I'm like, I mean, what if it's just my feet and people aren't seeing any of that, right? Like,
love that. Like,
I know. And my wife always jokes, she's like, you have a very big toe. I was like, can I monetize that big toe? She's like, listen, she's like, if no one sees your face, I don't give a shit what you do. If you're making money to pay the bills, I'm like, all right, well, that's a conversation for another podcast. We could call only toes, but we're going to get back on track here. And I want to get back to something certainly more serious. And you've certainly talked about it a million times. Part of your story is when you had AVM, which is basically a brain aneurysm for those who don't know. What happened there? Was it genetic? Was it stress related? Got the scars.
To be honest, AVM, which is, for those who don't know, arteriovenous malformation. It's a tangle of veins and vessels in the brain that doctors actually, it's very rare. It happens in less than 0.01 of the general population. So quite rare. And doctors don't actually know how it occurs, but they do know it happens as a fetus. So you're born with it. It's not hereditary. But typically, if you have a rupture, which is essentially a hemorrhagic stroke and an aneurysm, you're either very young, like less than 10 years old, or you're elderly. So for me, it happened when I was 27, and I was on set at a photo shoot. Modeling. I had 2 gigs that day, and we had just wrapped the first one. Fortunately, we were in Toronto here at a studio very prevalent in the East End. And, fashion studios are hot, sweaty. There's not a lot of open air. There's typically no windows.
Hot lights, yep.
It's like hot lights. There's there's a lot going on.
It's
a lot of people around. And so I got this crazy pain in my head. It felt like somebody was stabbing me. I was 27. I didn't really think anything of it. And it just was the most intense pain I have ever felt. So I went out into the hallway where there was an open window. It was June 17th of 2009. I have that date tattooed on my arm, as well as the date that I actually had my brain surgery, which was September 24th. Fortunately for me, my EMS or my makeup artist was a former EMS worker. And so she followed me out into the hallway and started asking me questions. What type of pain is it? Throbbing, pulsing, stabbing? And I was like, I don't know. It's just the most fucking intense pain I've ever felt. Like, forgive my swearing. It was so intense. And then the next thing I remember was, I think I fell to the floor. And I lost mobility on my right side because I had a full hemorrhagic stroke and 2 areas of bleeding in my brain. So technically 2 aneurysms. And I was paralyzed on my right side for a period of time because of the damage to my brain. Anyways, so I remember being on the floor, losing mobility, trying to pick up my phone and saying, like, call my emergency contact. And then the next thing I recall, I woke up in ICU and I had tubes everywhere. I had a tube in my throat and like all this beeping around. They had done a quick procedure to what's called cauterize the area of bleed, so just to stop it bleeding. But because there was multiple areas of bleeding, I had too much brain damage to have a full surgery. And at the time, they were still trying to figure out what the cause was. Because I was so young and I was healthy, I was fit, I didn't drink, I didn't, do any drugs. I was like an anomaly. And so they run all these tests, and then a week of being in ICU later, they tell me that I need to have a full craniotomy, which is a full brain surgery. So you can see I've got a horseshoe shaped scar on.
They opened you up.
They opened me up. Yeah. It was
see what's under the hood.
Exactly. So
Jeez.
that wasn't able to happen until the end of September of that year because I had too much damage. So I was blind for a period of time.
I was going to ask about that, how it affected your vision and speech.
Yes, vision and speech were heavily impacted. So vision, I was about 90% blind due to the bruising, bleeding, and damage. And speech, my brain was cognizant in the sense that I could actually formulate a sentence, but I found a disconnect between how I was able to communicate with the rate at which my brain would think I was communicating.
You had to be scared. I mean, were you scared of? Well, let me ask you this: you left the house at 16. Who was there for you? Hopefully, you had good friends and other maybe family around you to support you.
Yes, I was dating a lovely man at the time, and his family took care of me. They were there with me the whole time.
Talk to us about the recovery.
Yeah, it was intense. So after surgery, between June 17th was when I had the stroke and the aneurysm, and then September 24th was when I had my actual brain surgery. Surgery was 12 and a half hours long. Had to fill out all of the horrible paperwork that at 20 things you would want to even consider. So between June and September, I because the swelling and the bruising had sort of subsided enough to allow for surgery, I did regain, cognitive mobility, if you will. I wouldn't say limited. I had full capacity, but it was laborious, let's say. And I had around, 60% vision going into surgery, and they had anticipated that would alleviate post-op. So there was a lot of rehab in the sense of, just getting up and walking every day. And I saw, being in the neuro ward, I really saw some sad stories and
yes.
things that humble you, let's say.
How long was it? How long?
About 2 years. I was off work for 2 years. I did some modeling stuff. I closed my agencies during that time. So I closed both my agencies, and I did some modeling work here and there in between during that 2 year time frame, just when I felt physically I was able to stand for 12 hours, if you will, or 8 hours. But it was 2 years. 2 years.
During that time, what was that thought process about, once you're able to focus on the healing and you felt confident that you were going down the right path of what's next career-wise? Like, maybe modeling is not going to be forever. No one ever thinks modeling is going to be forever. But how'd you wrap your head around that? What was next?
So it was interesting. When I decided it was time to re-enter the workforce, let's say, I wanted something more stable, because in my fashion life, I was traveling constantly. I'd been to some really beautiful places around the world, but you're always on the road, right? And so I wanted something that was a little more stable and So given my background, which was marketing and fashion and media, it was somewhat of a natural transition into the advertising space, which is where I am currently, advertising and media. And so I took a job at an out-of-home company. At the time, it was called Titan Outdoor. They no longer exist.
But they used to be everywhere. I remember the bottom of the billboard seeing Titan.
They used to be everywhere.
So out of home, it's so funny because I was telling you before, and I'm an ad guy, but what's the definition of out of home? Explain out of home advertising to anyone out there who's not in the industry. OOH.
OOH.
OOH. Oh.
It's I like to call it offline advertising. So when you leave your house, hence the term out of home, you see billboards, you see, Times Square, Yonge Dundas Square, you see all sorts of big, beautiful assets that are on the side of a highway. You see a transit shelter, you see a bus wrap. All of that is classified as out of home. You go to a restaurant and you see an advertisement, in the washroom above the sink.
Or on the menu, right? On the menu. Yeah. I love the diner menus, the local ads.
Exactly. That's all classified as out of home. So it takes many different formats, from outdoor to indoor, which we call place-based. But yeah, I took a job in out of home as a marketing director, and I quickly took over the tech because I'm a nerd. So I ran all of their IT infrastructure for a while, and then Titan decided they were going to sell the Canadian assets off. So they had recently sold their UK assets. They were a multinational company at the time. So when I joined, they had just recently sold off their UK assets. And about maybe 7-8 months into my role with them here in the Canadian space, they decided to sell the Canadian assets off.
Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love, and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial, and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website.
Let's get into the tech side of billboards, because it's so funny. We were driving upstate this past weekend and when it was Route 17, from the New York State Thruway, off the New York State Thruway, and there was this one stretch that I swear to God had like 40 billboards in like a quarter mile. And I'm like, I said to my wife, she's like, what the hell is that? I'm like, that is one property owner is trying to maximize the amount of billboards there. But they were like old school billboards, right? They were for all the local businesses and everything that are up there. And then I started talking to her about billboard technology, and we're talking about the innovation in Times Square, which is pretty much the epicenter of innovation in interactive billboards. I think the first when you think of Times Square, they had the camel smoking ad. They had smoke coming out of the camel, and then the soup, the cup of noodle soup coming out there. So creative. And now we fast forward to today's digital age, where these billboards are so intricate and they involve so much technology, whether it be geo-facing, interactive, any type of AR, AI, any type of Web3 integration, so many different ways to do it. Talk to us a little bit about, that innovation side of tech and how that really spoke to your passion of being a nerd.
Absolutely. So I quickly learned that, the billboard industry was relatively traditional, and there was huge opportunity and upside opportunity to innovate and to drive technology through this medium. And it happens both with what we would call classic or static inventory. So your traditional billboard, like the static stuff you see, but also in the digital side of things. So first and foremost, what my company does is ingest over 8.5 million, we call it road segments, on an hourly basis right across the country, which allows us to understand consumer movements and like volume of movements, flow. So, what percentage of traffic turns left versus goes right or straight at an intersection. That we ingest on an hourly basis. And we take this information, we then observe, these analytics to understand consumer movements to what we classify as a home origin, which would be a device persistently static over a study period. Usually that study period is around 12 months. And we understand, okay, this device lives in this static location. We take that longitude and latitude and reverse geocode that into either a zip code or a postal code in Canada. And then we work with companies like StatsCan or, the governments that are doing all of the census surveys. And that allows us to be able to target or provide to clients and advertisers the ability to understand the consumer audience that's actually passing by a specific out-of-home asset. And then on the creative side, with respect to digital out-of-home, there's so much innovation. We've got new technology like anamorphic creative, which is that 3D where it feels like you're coming out of. It's
pretty cool stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's
right. And like even like the bus stops in New York here are incredible, and it's been a canvas for experimentation.
Yeah,
and I think it's innovating a lot on the creative side too, because it's allowing creative directors to come up with crazy ideas because it's attention grabbing, right? And you may have somebody's attention if it's a billboard for what's this at 2.2 seconds? I'm making it up, like pretty close to that, or a bus stop where you might be sitting there for 20, 30 minutes and absorbing it and engaging with it. And there was one with the I don't know if you saw it in New York City. It was a year or two ago where it looked like it had $1 million locked in it.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Right, it's a playground of innovation, but it's weird because in the industry, OOH has always been like the stepchild, right? Like it's not as sexy and everything, but I think it is. I think it's an incredible opportunity to be
like
physically present.
Canvas. It's literally an open canvas.
It is giant canvas.
Literally. And creatively, you can do whatever you want. There's like, you can do 3D projection mapping on a building. You can create experiences that are like aha moments where you're not just amplifying a brand with this experience, but you're also like encouraging engagement and the social sharing side of things. It's really like, I love out of home from a creative perspective. There's so many opportunities. Even from a data perspective, I fell in love with it. Actually, funny story.
Go for it.
My first experience with out of home was as a fashion model. So I did this campaign for Jean Machine. Do y'all remember that?
No.
It was like
Can't say that I do. You're lying to my audience.
It was a denim retailer, and they were really big in North America. So I landed their campaign, and they put me on billboards all over. But one of the billboards happened to be, there was a massive one in Times Square, and then there was one here in Toronto at Yonge Dundas Square, which is the Times Square of Canada. And it actually had, so it was my back, and I was wearing like a jacket and these like shorts, but they did a 3D extension on the billboard itself to look like a skirt. And then when the wind blew, the skirt blew up, and it caught the attention of everybody, on the street, because they're like, the billboard model's skirt blew up. So I remember going down and taking photos on like my SLR camera at the time, or like my flip phone.
Regular camera.
Old school cameras, yeah. But that was the first time I noticed out of home. I was like, damn, because everybody wants to be on a billboard. Like,
what was that like? The first time you saw yourself on a billboard? Like, let's pause
like
there.
Blown away, completely blown away. I was like, whoa, larger than life. Is this real? You feel like you've made it when you get to see yourself on a billboard.
Right. So you can help me get this episode with your show art on a billboard in Canada, so I could finally see my face, your face on a billboard with my. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll do it.
I mean, like you see how you feel it, right?
Yeah,
like
there's something visceral about it. And that stuck with me from that point on. And it's funny that, I landed into this career in out of home and also in media. So fun fact, I'm not just the CEO or president of COM. I'm also the CEO of Billboard magazine in Canada. We just launched October 5th here in the
awesome.
States, so music magazine.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. But I'm curious about your dipping your toes into the crypto and blockchain world with Centris. What got you into that? Is it your tech side that you were? And what are your thoughts on is Web3? First of all, I mean, go on my soapbox here. I think it doesn't need to be branded. It's not doing any good for the industry. I mean, this is technology. Talk to us a little bit about your entry into that world.
Yeah, so I ended up in that space. Okay, maybe need to backtrack a little bit. When in my out-of-home space, I built 2 startups. I sold one with a bunch of partners, not just me solely. We sold one to Bell Media, and we sold another one to Outfront Media. And when Outfront acquired our company, at the time was called Dynamic Outdoor. I stayed with Outfront for about 18 months. I was their youngest executive. I think it was 32 or 3 at the time.
It's impressive.
Thank you. And so after my 18 months with Outfront, it's an amazing company, great people, loved my time there. I wanted something different. So I quit, and I decided to partner with a few friends and start a company called Centris, which was we called it an executive consultancy company in Web3. So we built our own products, which was really great. We sold a couple to Deloitte, and we worked with some really cool partners. But we also gave low-level investment to Web3 companies that were looking to sort of dabble into this space. And we would insert ourselves in as executive consultants for like the first 2-3 months, just to help them get off and running, give them the business structure, help them understand, what the needs are, what the gaps in the market are, and whatnot. And it's interesting because at the time, this was back in 2018, I think, 2017, 2018.
It's early. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we built a fully decentralized tokenization marketplace, and I branded it to this crazy, we call
way
it
too early.
way too early. So it's basically like the whole NFT craze that is of today. But we were just way too early, or was, yeah. So I love the space. The technology in it of itself is literally just that. Blockchain, people might be intimidated by it. They think blockchain and all they immediately go to is crypto.
Right. Crypto is not blockchain. Blockchain is not crypto. Crypto is not NFTs. Like, get over it.
Literally. Blockchain is a technology. It's a database. Fundamentally, that's it. It's a database.
It's a decentralized database. It's lots of different computer touch points that are sharing and storing the information.
It is just a database, people. Yes. It's a way to share info, and you can do
It's almost like the internet, right? If you think about it, like the early days of the internet, it was different things stored in different areas.
It's the same concept, but it's just like revamped. Let's say it's the new internet, if you will. And we used to get this question all the time when we were going to like pitches. We're trying to like sell, companies or like even big companies, because we had like a B2C and a B2B vertical within Centris, where we were like talking to, the Deloittes of the world. And we're like, no, you can do a permission chain. And they're like, what? Huh? We're like, yeah, you can keep it in your own little bubble. It's not the whole world doesn't have access to your shit. It's just like in your...
Like there are security features to access the information. It's not free internet.
No. So it's funny to me to see like how blockchain is perceived, let's say. It's an incredible technology. One of the things that we talk about with Art's Help, which is a not-for-profit that my business partner started and I'm on the board of, we talk about the environmental impacts, specifically, the various different consensus algorithms, proof of work versus proof of stake, and the impact on what that looks like.
From an energy consumption perspective, and mining and yada, yada.
Exactly. So we do a lot of education on that. It's a great space. I do think that we're going to see a lot of resurgence, even with NFTs. I just think it's an early market. It's going to take 10 years to adopt.
So what do you think the killer app is going to be for mass adoption?
Killer app for mass adoption. That's a good question.
I think healthcare. I think real estate transactions.
Supply chain is like the biggest, like the lowest hanging fruit. Everybody was trying to get into the supply chain, logistics, manufacturing. We did something with a bullet manufacturer. I'm not going to say which one, but they manufactured bullets for a country's police services. And they wanted to, because there was a lot of gun violence in that particular country. So they wanted to understand, the flow of where the
products are ending up, the end user.
But again, I think people are scared of blockchain because it is fully transparent. So, governmental and political services, it would be great if they took, if they adopted, leveraging blockchain. But I think it'll be a while.
I do appreciate your perspective. There's a theme, from doing our research, a theme around disruption. Whenever you take a new role, you're coming in, you're disrupting it. And disruption, in some regards, is a buzzword, unless you're actually doing it. What's your this is going to sound so counterintuitive, but what's your thought process around coming in and disrupting a technology or a brand or a process or something that's been, quote unquote, set in stone for many years?
Why are we sleeping if it's set in stone for so many years? For me, I like a challenge, and I like inherently as a human, I just can't sit still. So if I take a role and I'm with an organization, the company knows that I can't sit still. I cannot be static.
That's not why they brought you in. They knew what they're getting into. They know why they brought you on board.
And I will be a bit of a shit disturber. I will be that person that, talks back and says no, I don't think that this is right. Or why aren't we doing this? Why have we, spent the last 15 years doing the exact same thing? Why are we not trying to change? And oftentimes, there's resistance that comes with that. But at the end of the day, to me, disruption is culture. So in order to disrupt or to change, you have to have the right team around you. It's not about one person's vision. It's about ensuring that, I might have a great idea, what I think is a great idea, but I've got the right people around me to tell me, Amanda, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. Or that's a great idea. Let's run with it.
So you talk about this pushback. How would you describe the difference of, when you've seen male colleagues in the industry pushing back versus females pushing back?
Do you want my honest answer?
Yeah, that's what we want. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's be real.
Let's be real here. I'm not shitting around. We're disrupting the podcast.
We'll be real. We'll be like full on real. I'm a very young CEO. I'm, as I said, 40 years old. I took over Comb when I was 37. I was the youngest and the youngest CEO globally of an association that does.
I have the buttons. I'm going to use it.
I was the youngest CEO globally that does what we do in the industry. And when I took over, I had a lot of male, not colleagues, not within my organization, but within the industry, who were of very senior positions. Whether
old school, as we like to call it.
Yeah,
old school boys club kind of.
Yeah, I had a lot of them, look at me and literally, sweetheart, let me tell you something. I'm like, sweetheart, let me tell you.
Sweetheart, with the cigar in the mouth. Let me tell you, come sit on my lap.
Once again, I have like the thickest skin ever, so like it doesn't wholly bother me, but I will put you in your place. Just watch me open my mouth, and I will school you based on what I'm about to do for the industry. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that the pushback between the dynamics of gender, let's say. I think honestly, like truly for the most part, everyone has been very supportive of what I've done. There's, rare occasions where I have these situations where people are, condescending and whatnot. And it's fine because to me, I'm like, okay, you can hate all you want, whether you're male, female, or whatever other gender you identify with. I truly like just watch what I do. And to me, like I never let that bother me. I never take it personal. And that maybe is a piece of advice that I can share to your listeners, that people are going to say and judge and do whatever they want. Like,
haters going to hate.
Haters going to hate. You literally cannot change somebody's opinion. So at the end of the day, just change their opinion or show them by the work that you do and the results that you garner. That's
powerful.
It.
Yeah, powerful. So most recently, you mentioned before you went from billboards to Billboard. Talk to us about that transition in your career.
Well, I do both. So I'm still in billboards in the out-of-home space. And we just recently launched Billboard magazine here in the Canadian space. So my business partner and I, I call him Fammy, literally, like we've worked together in various entities.
I like it. Fammy. Family. Mm-hmm.
Family for the past decade plus. And so he has a company called Arts Help, which is the largest global digital arts publication focused on cloud marketing. And so I sit on the board of directors for Arts Help, and I'm technically the CEO of media for them as well. But we have a big partnership with the United Nations, and with that company, we grew from just a social platform. We were it started in, I think, 2018 as an Instagram account that was focused really on sustainability and environmental impact and climate activism. And, that grew within a year to over 20 million followers just organically. And so we were like, okay, there's a business here. And anyways.
What do you attribute that growth success to? That's a huge jump.
Community.
Community.
Yeah.
And how'd you foster that?
Content. So we're a media publication. So it was pure content. The type of content that we were putting out was global. And during the pandemic, we did some activations. We won a Guinness Book of World Records. We sent art to space. Like we did some really unique stuff to garner some good PR, let's say. And the following has, just continued to grow. But because of that, we actually had Penske Media Corp approach us, which is the parent company of Billboard and Variety and South by Southwest, Rolling Stone, like a number of titles. And they wanted to buy us. as a publication. We were like, actually, we joked. We were like, actually, we kind of want to buy you.
All right, continue.
So we have grand visions of building into a large media house, and we had conversations where we were discussing other titles outside of Billboard magazine, and we are still continuing several of those conversations. But Billboard it fit with us. It fit from a cultural perspective. It fit from a gap in the marketplace in the Canadian space. A lot of media publications are closing down. There's new legislation from a privacy perspective that's limiting content from the US or from other markets into Canada.
I was about to ask about that.
Yeah, Meta's got like the hold on that, Meta, Google, and so we saw a gap in the marketplace and we jumped at it and we said, we'll take this.
Is there a physical publication or is it all digital?
It's all digital right now. We will do special edition prints here and there. But
what's your thought on that? Is there a comeback for like that textile, feeling it, holding in your hand? I mean, I used to enjoy reading like Rolling Stone and Sports Illustrated and other magazines before the
fashion girl.
I don't like reading. I don't like reading on the internet. Just I have to. I like holding books. I cannot read the downloadable books, the Kindles. I can't.
Oh, I was about to say, what is that? The Kindle thing? Yeah.
I like to turn pages. I feel like I need to be in the book. I can't. I swipe all day long. I just can't read like that. Like,
you and I are similar. I love a tactile magazine.
Tactile. That's the word I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. For our
vocabulary, not so good.
For our media kit, we actually printed a physical magazine. We leave
disrupting
it
backwards, right? Like, what's old is new again. I love that shit.
So every client meeting that we go to, we leave these media kits in, and they're like, "Oh my god, these are so sexy! Like, this is so cool. We actually have a physical magazine."
Like I'm slick one pager, like a nice.
It's honestly like a magazine. It's probably like 8-10 pages. Our team put together a very robust media kit. And yes, of course, we have a digital copy, but we thought it was cool to have something like tangible. Let me.
It's memorable and it's physical, and they cannot just delete it. They could have it. Let me bring it back here. I was saying earlier, the show rooted in career journeys and career advice. As someone that has hired, I assume many people, has interviewed lots of people. When someone gets to you in the interview process, I assume they've already check the boxes from a qualification standpoint. They have the skills for that job that they're interviewing for. Now they're coming to you and you're going to dig in and you're going to really try to assess character and values and why they should be part of the organization and if they're a good fit. What are some of those, secret, not so secret Amanda Dorenberg interview tactics and questions?
So I'm not a traditional interviewer. I like to just have a conversation because I want to see who the person is. By the time they've gotten to me, they've already gone through the questions. My team has already,
they've
interviewed them they've pre-screened, they've interviewed on like, are you capable of doing this job? Yes or no. So I don't need to ask those questions. What I want to know is what scares them, what motivates them, what inspires them. And these are just conversational components. And why I want to know what scares people is because underneath fear comes growth. So if they're scared, for example, I'm terrified of public speaking. To me, I can see as a leader, okay, well, this is an area of growth opportunity for you, and we need to understand why you're scared of public speaking. If you are inspired by your parents, then you probably have had a great familial upbringing, and you have, core values that you will bring into a company. And you may have some traditional values, but you may also have some non-traditional values. So they're somewhat strategic, like psychological questions, because it's not just about the answer. It's about understanding what is driving this individual, what's motivating them, what makes them tick, both personally and professionally, because their personal interests are ultimately going to bleed into their professional lives and how they do their work. Like if they are a sports enthusiast, probably a team player. If they're not a sports enthusiast, maybe not a team player.
And that one, I mean, that one could go either way. So,
True.
If someone's looking at your resume, right, just on paper, I mean, there's been a lot of movement, until you kind of unpack it and really understand. I mean, I wouldn't call you a job jumper by any means, but what advice would you give folks who might be in a career or a job that they don't like, and having that how do you get to that point of saying, yeah, I'm done with this shit. I'm out of here. I'm going to try something, because that's not easy, right? And obviously you have financial factors and everything, but what kind of guidance framework would you give for that thought process?
So, I mean, anybody who looks at my LinkedIn will see that I typically stay with an organization 3 to 4 years max, because I get bored very quickly. Full transparency. Everybody I speak to, I'll say the same thing. I get bored very, very quickly. I need to be challenged. So advice for somebody who's not happy within their role is to find something that inspires them. Money isn't everything. And frankly, the less you focus on the fiscal component, the more the money will come to you organically and naturally, because you're actually doing something you're passionate about and you're putting your time and effort into something that you absolutely love. The money comes naturally after that. And I know that that sounds silly and people will be like, oh my gosh, that's not the case. But the more you chase money, the more you're probably going to hate your life in the work you're doing, because you're just chasing a dollar. You're not actually chasing what you're passionate about. If you find something that you're passionate about and that you love to do every day, you wake up excited. You don't wake up being like, shit, I freaking hate my day today.
That's not the way to live. So, Amanda, this has been a fantastic conversation. Before I bring it home here, what's next on the horizon? Give us some alpha. What are you working on that's exciting you these days?
Totally. So with Comb, we are launching a new product. So it's a data science and tech platform that will allow the media industry to understand various different insights and consumer psychographics, demographic and lifestyle components, as well as, just volume information down to, on the digital side, digital out of home, spot or ad play level. So, an 8-second spot will be able to tell you exactly how many impressions you've garnered and what that audience looks like. And on the Billboard side, we are already talking expansions internationally.
I love it. Good stuff here. So let's bring it home here. And my final 2 questions I ask every guest, and it's been a crazy compilation of over 300 episodes of answers. Amanda, what is the single greatest piece of advice you have ever received that you take action on every day?
Always be curious.
Curiosity is one of my most favorite attributes of somebody. Always be curious.
Every day, learn something new. Just always be curious. Never be stagnant.
Never be stagnant. And Amanda, last but not least, you look back on your life and you think about, you have the scars to show it, the low points, the lowest points when you didn't know if you were going to survive. You didn't know if you're going to survive. That's how fucked up you were, right?
Literally.
And you look back on that time and you're lying in the hospital bed and you're going through years of recovery and you had to pull yourself up and harness that inner tenacity to drive you forward to the place that you are today. Successful, building companies, building people, building products. And you sit here with gratitude and respect for what you've built and what you're building in the future. Amanda Dorenberg, what is your compass? What is your beacon? What is your North Star in life?
Humility, kindness, and grace. I respect everyone. It doesn't matter what walk of life you came from. And each individual is unique. So I truly try to pride myself on humility, kindness, and grace. Always be gracious to anyone. Kindness is self-explanatory, but humility, the gratitude and perhaps this is because of my life and my upbringing and whatnot and the surgery, but I'm just grateful every single day to be here. And I think if we start to take for granted what we have, which is the ability to breathe this beautiful air, to walk around every day, because so many people don't have that luxury. They can't walk, or they don't have the luxury to be outside. I just, yes, always be humble and grateful.
I love it. And I am grateful for you taking the time this morning to join us on the podcast. Everyone, you could check out Amanda. You could follow her on social media channels at Amanda Dorenberg all together. Where else could folks find you, connect, and learn more?
I write for Forbes, Fast Company, Rolling Stone, and Entrepreneur magazines as well, under my first and last name, again, at Amanda Dorenberg. Instagram, same thing. Thread, Twitter, it's all just under my first and last name.
That's how you do it. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. Hang with me one moment as we sign off. Thank you for your time, your honesty, Yeah, of course. It's been a great chat. And everyone out there, if this episode resonated with you, please leave a review rating. It goes a long way. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, adam@nhptalentgroup.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. Find out more at thepodcast.com. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.